Mike Wickett. After 10 years in Milwaukee talking sports, I took a bit of a break, but now I'm back and here to talk about the Packers, the Bucks, the Brewers, and more with you. And now inside the Cause Headphones studios, this is Wickett on Wisconsin with me, Mike Wickett.
All right, so it only took me a few tries to figure out my technical issues, which I'm not terribly proud of, but I am glad that we actually got it figured out. So if you are watching, thank you for sticking with me. It took me 5 or 6 actual attempts to get it right, but I'm glad we got it. Sounds like I still have some technical issues on some of the audio, but you get the gist. So if you're wondering about yesterday, and I did not do a podcast last night after the Bucks season came to an end and the Game 5 loss to the Miami Heat. I didn't do it. A couple of reasons. One, I was in the middle of a fantasy football draft. That's 100% true of why I didn't get to a podcast last night. So there you go. But I also needed to collect a lot of thoughts, and I needed to have some things happen. I wanted to hear some thoughts from Giannis, and I didn't want to just jump on the fire everybody in this team, another year, and what rhymes with sucks, Bucks, and all that kind of stuff, because I know how people get around the Milwaukee Bucks, and I've seen people's timelines, and I've seen people's Facebook posts, and I've seen people's tweets about how upset everybody is after this loss. And you are 100% within your right to be upset about the fact that the Bucks season came to an end the way that it came to an end. There's a bunch of different reasons the Bucks got bounced in 5, and obviously the big one was Giannis' injury, but I don't know if they win that series if Giannis doesn't get hurt. I wasn't terribly mad last night. I think I was more upset when Giannis went down, because I knew the Bucks had talent to win Game 4. I knew that Chris Middleton was good enough to put the team on his back for a game. Like, that wasn't a question for me. But I didn't think that the team had talent to win 2 games or 3 games or, God forbid, 4 straight against Miami without Giannis. And frankly, when he went down that second time and he was in agony, absolute agony, you knew his season was done. Or at least you knew he wasn't going to be playing for a long time, and it was going to take some kind of a miracle to get Giannis back on the floor, and it was going to take a Herculean effort by this team to be able to stay alive before they, or until they got their star back, and they just didn't have it in them. Let's be honest. I mean, the Bucks haven't looked good since early March. I mean, they didn't look good at the end of the year. I know there was the injury to Giannis, and he was healthy when they got into the bubble. They didn't look good in the bubble, and I don't know what happened in the layoff. I have no idea what happened in the layoff, and if you want to comment on Facebook, I'm watching the thread right now. I'd love to have your comments, and I'll read them on the podcast here. I guess I can just start running through some stuff and what has to change, what has to happen for next year. I mean, the layoff itself, Chris Middleton jokingly said that, he didn't pick up a basketball for the entire time the team was off. I don't know if I necessarily believe that, but that's what Chris said. I think he was just trying to get out of any sort of leads he could give anybody. So I think Chris picked up a basketball. But the layoff did something to this team because they never got quite right. They were never super intense defensively. They were never super together offensively. Certainly not like when the season came to a grinding halt back in March. You know what I mean? Like, that was never the Bucks team you remember watching or I remember watching whatsoever. I think something too, and I think everybody had to deal with this, but the Bucks relied so much on you. When you would fill Fiserv Forum, you lit it up, and that team was energized. I think that the home court advantage that the Bucks always got because of you really was lost in that bubble. I mean, I liked it watching it as a fan. I think it was a cool way to do it with the pumped-in crowd noise and the virtual fans. Like, I'm sitting on my couch thinking, hey, this kind of feels like watching a regular NBA playoff game. I know they didn't feel that way inside the bubble playing on the floor. I can guarantee you that. So the home court advantage, and again, everybody had to play in this bubble without their home fans. L.A., Houston, Miami, everybody. But I really feel like it affected the Bucks a heck of a lot. You might think these are all excuses. These are all just reasons that played into it. What was the stat I put up yesterday? The Bucks are 5-9 in their last 14 playoff games. I don't care who you are, and I don't care what the talent level is. If you are the number one seed back-to-back years and you go 5-9 in playoff games, that's not good. And that's on Coach Bud. And the Pacers fired their head coach for getting swept in the first round by the Miami Heat. And the expectations for Indiana couldn't have been what they were for Milwaukee. I'm 50-50 on whether or not Bud comes back. I mean, I thought if they got to Game 7, maybe Bud would have a better chance of coming back, but other teams are figuring Bud out right now. I don't know if Bud comes back. I think Budenholzer might just be a real good regular season coach. And as we're learning, not a great playoff coach. Nick Nurse outcoached him and Spoelstra outcoached him. I mean, he's lucky he didn't see Brad Stevens. There were 3 coaches better than him in the Eastern Conference. All would have outcoached him. And I think the Bucks have a real tough decision. Now, who would they bring in? People always want to say, who would you bring in if it's not your guy? Sam Cassell is a name that people are talking a lot about. He's an assistant coach with Kawhi and the Kawhi and the Clippers. And everybody loves what Sam Cassell brought, as a Milwaukee Buck, part of the runs in the early 2000s. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's on top of the list. Is he going to come in and do better than Mike Budenholzer? I don't know, they won 60 games and then 56 in a shortened season. They got to the Eastern Conference Finals. They were up 2-0 in the Eastern Conference Finals, and then they lost the remaining 4 games there. So I don't know. I don't know if what Cassell brings to the table puts him over the hump. He's an assistant coach. He'd be a first-time head coach if he came to Milwaukee. So my best guess is Budenholzer survives because they like him. I think if you want to get over that hump, I think you fire Budenholzer and go another way. I think Mike is one of those guys, nice guy, good regular season coach. I think Budenholzer is one of those guys that his system gets you to a point. And I don't think he's a good enough strategist and in-game adjustment kind of head coach to get you over that point. I think Spoelstra definitely is. I mean, you saw what Spo did, especially when Giannis went down in Game 2. Check that, Game 4. When Giannis went down, all of a sudden in the second half, Miami said, we're pounding the middle. Bam's going to go off. We're driving to the rack. They still shot their threes, but they attacked the middle a lot more. And somebody brought this up. This is a good question, too. Walt brought this up on the Facebook page. And, Walt, I have this in my notes, and I'm just going to bring it right now. When you knew Giannis wasn't going to be able to play and Miami was going to attack the rim, what has happened to Robin Lopez? What doghouse? Is he injured? Did he pee in someone's cereal? Did he mess up Mike Budenholzer's hair at some point? Like, what's happened to Robin Lopez? That's a dude that should have gotten some run, I think, in this playoff series, but he didn't. I mean, other guys didn't get any. Sterling Brown didn't. Ersan Ilyasova didn't play in this. The kid from Michigan that everybody loves to rip on didn't play at all in this series either. I think that DJ Wilson, I think that's a bust of a pick, and Milwaukee will never get that one back. But that's a good question, Walt. Whatever happened to Robin Lopez? That is a guy that could have brought you some intensity, some physicality. Could have been a rim protector. I mean, that I don't know. I don't have an answer, but I have the same question that you had in this. And honestly, when Giannis went down, it really exposed the lack of ability to get buckets by everybody besides Chris Middleton. And say what you want. I know people are going after Chris because he didn't have a great Game 5, but they don't get to Game 5 without Chris Middleton. And he played well for the first half, 3 quarters in that loss last night. I know that the Chris Middleton fight goes on, and I'm an apologist, and if you're a Chris Middleton hater, that's cool. Like, we can probably sit down and have a beer, and half the time I'm going to be right, and half the time you're going to be right. My guy's still going to be darn near 50, 40, 90 and an all-star, and a guy who can hit the mid-range jumper like Rip Hamilton did back in the day, and everybody did in the 80s and the 90s before the three-point bonanza that we see now. Yeah, I don't know what the Bucks' plan was when Miami figured if we take Chris Middleton away, where do we go? And you know what? I want to welcome you, and you can join the conversation too. Hi, my name is Mike Wickett. I'm a defender of Eric Bledsoe. I know I have a problem, and I'm here to talk about it. it became really, really difficult after last playoffs, last year in 2019, to defend Eric Bledsoe and his horrific three-point shooting and his terrible decision-making when he played like the Bledsoe. When he decided to become a three-point shooter, and he's not a very good, I mean, he's a 35, 34% career three-point shooter, somewhere in there. I think it was 33.5, I think I saw today, for his career three-point ability. And I've been the guy that said if Bledsoe plays within himself and plays well, that he's what takes the team from great to elite, because he facilitates and he does what he does well. But gosh darn it, after watching Game 5, it became really, 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 really hard for me to sit here and say I'm an Eric Bledsoe guy, because how many momentum-killing misses or momentum-killing threes did that guy jack up or miss? Or, I mean, layups he was missing. Even the jumper, the 15-footer that he's so decent at, he was even missing those. Like, I don't know if I can do it anymore, man. I don't know if I can defend Eric Bledsoe, who is one of the best defensive guards in the NBA, all-NBA first team. But when his team needed him to make smart decisions, get buckets, and hit shots in the most important game of the year, he was bad Bledsoe. He was jack up threes Bledsoe. He was take terrible shots and miss layups Bledsoe. So I have been a Bledsoe defender. I have been a Bledsoe apologist. I don't think I can be that guy anymore. I think if you want to tell me, see, I was right and you were wrong, that's fine. That's fine. They needed him to step up, and they needed him to play as an all-star point guard on offense, and he couldn't do it. And I think that's one of the two big factors that played into the loss yesterday. And the other thing, too, I honestly believe that when you just watch that game, like, Milwaukee came out, and they were on fire, they were focused, and they had at one point a 13-point lead in that first half. You know, what it kind of felt like was a second-round game between, like, a mid-tier, mid-major going up against one of the Blue Bloods, and they give them all they can for like 9 minutes in the NCAA tournament. And then talent just kind of starts to do this. You know what I mean? And the coaching adjustments and the coaching difference, and Miami is just that they're that much better than Milwaukee without Giannis. Bucks are still a good team. Like, if they played a season without Giannis, they're probably a 6 seed, 5 seed, something like that in the East. But the talent just started to tick away, and no matter what Milwaukee did, they couldn't get back. They couldn't get anywhere near to having a significant lead where you really felt good. And I was sitting there, I'm on my laptop, I'm doing my fantasy draft last night, and I got the game on, and I was cringing. It was just hard to watch. And then there was a 9-point lead with like a minute and a half to go, and you're like, well, that's it. That's the season. That's it. You know, there's not going to be a miracle comeback. And they just didn't have the talent after Giannis went down. A lot of stuff. Wow, a lot of you guys getting in. Thank you so much for everybody getting in on the Facebook page. Greg says that Miami had the home court advantage even with no crowd. I don't know how that is even possible. Chad, they played selfish in basketball when they got into the bubble. I don't know if they played selfish basketball in the bubble, Chad. I would just go out and say they didn't play good basketball. They stood around. They watched Giannis. They didn't do anything. They just were there. And then it was like the best the Bucks played was Game 1 against Boston, the first game of the bubble, and then the second half of Game 4 against Miami. That was it. Like, that's the only time when I was like, wow, this is the real Bucks. And then it didn't happen that way. Let's see. Yeah, Walt, I read your question about Robin Lopez. Greg, good luck next year. No more Greek Freak. My prediction, follow the money. Greg, if he's going to follow the money, he gets more money in Milwaukee than anywhere else. So that's a bad take. Joe says, you would think all those years on Coach Popovich's coaching staff, he would know what to do and make adjustments. That's a good point. You know, there's a couple of guys I would love to sit and learn from in the NBA over the last 25 years, and Popovich is one of those guys. Popovich was also blessed with David Robinson, then Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, Kawhi Leonard. Like, he had a boatload of all-stars that Bud didn't have. You know what I mean? He didn't have in this Bucks squad. Mitch, my guy, look at my guy. Thunder is out there. What's up, Mitchnellis? The Bucks never found their vibe in the bubble. They never clicked. I agree with you, and I don't know if it was the social justice movement that they were spearheading. I don't know if it was just the layoff. I don't know if it was the environment within the bubble. They didn't click. They didn't vibe. They never got their mojo back. Like what you saw in December and January when this team was lighting it up. And again, it's a different beast, regular season to the playoffs. But that team was playing great basketball. This team did not show the ability to play great basketball, other than, like I said, one game in the pre-8, and then parts of this series against Miami. So now what? I know what your answer is. It's Packers season. I understand that. We will get to tons of Packers stuff. Don't worry. I got lots of Packers guests. I'm going to get lined up, and we're going to have instant reaction after the Packers opener against Minnesota. But now what? You're already seeing rumors that the Bucs are going to make a trade for a big-name veteran point guard out of Oklahoma City, and that's Chris Paul. The Bucs sorely lack a creative point guard who can go to the hole and who plays smart. Like I said, Eric Bledsoe, I'm sick of defending. Hi, my name's Mike Wickett. I'm an Eric Bledsoe apologist. Bledsoe doesn't play smart. Bledsoe tends to play very inconsistent and play stupid at times. And when called upon, Eric Bledsoe can't lead you. If you're watching that Oklahoma City series against Houston, the first round of the playoffs, you know Chris Paul can take a team on his back. You've been watching him for his entire career, and you know Chris Paul can take an entire team on his back and score 4 times down the floor. Or he can be a guy for a quarter that sees everything, facilitates, scores, does it all. If the Bucs are going to make that move and they're going to cut ties with Bledsoe, trade him away, and bring in a guy like Chris Paul, where my head was going, I'm all for that. I'm 100% all for that because, as Greg has said, that the Bucs the Greek Freak is going to follow the money, which I don't agree with. But if they want to prove to Giannis that they want to get a win, a championship, a trophy, a Larry O'Brien, they want to get a banner hung. If that is something that the Bucs are going to pretend they really want to do, then they really got to prove to Giannis and say, hey, we're going to do this. We're going to bring in the guys necessary to bring you a championship. Who do you want? I bet they're sitting there right now and they are going to have a meeting with Giannis and they're going to say, what is it you need? And the answer Giannis is going to say probably is, I need he loves Chris, so Middleton's not going anywhere, but I need somebody who can score off the dribble, and that might be Chris Paul. Financially, Chris Paul is supposed to make $40 million each of the next 2 years, or 41 and 39, or something ridiculous like that. So the Bucs are going to have to make some financial adjustments, if you will, if that's the move. Somebody else suggested Drew Holiday. I don't know how easy it would be to get Drew Holiday. Younger, probably an easier contract. I don't know the details of Drew Holiday's contract whatsoever, but probably an easier fit financially than Chris Paul would be. Kirk says, let's see here, Chris Paul, $45 million and 36 years old, Dame time. You think you're getting Damian Lillard out of Portland? Man, they haven't had a franchise. There ain't no way Damian Lillard is leaving. Ain't no way Damian Lillard's leaving Portland. They're never going to let that guy go. Joe says, I'm going to miss Bledsoe, but we need a veteran point guard. If the Bucs make this move to get Chris Paul, it will be the right move. Again, it's an expensive move, and you wonder at what point does Chris Paul begin to lose it at 36. That's a good – Kirk brought that up. That's a really big number. To me, the 36 matters more than the $45 million. That matters more to me than any sort of salary. Cordell says, what about Bradley Beal? Love to see that. I'd be fine with Bradley Beal. Problem is, does he take – Chris Paul's not your scoring point guard. Drew Holiday's not your scoring point guard. They can score, but does that take minutes away? Like, that's the big question. Does that take buckets away from Middleton and Giannis? Would they sacrifice that to bring in a point guard who isn't Eric Bledsoe? That's important, too. That is important, too. So the only guys, by the way, to me, that I don't want to see shipped out of town if they do make some monumental move, and somebody on Twitter sent me this ridiculous trade of sending all these players out, and involves the Lakers and Bledsoe going to the Lakers and Kuzma going to Oklahoma City, all that kind of stuff. I want to see Giannis in town, Chris Middleton in town, DiVincenzo I want to see stick around. I'd like to see what he can do in his junior season. And to me, George Hill. Bring back the NBA's most efficient three-point shooter and a guy who's a part of the glue of this team. Other than that, I'm not going to be sad. I'd like to see Brook Lopez stick around too. But Korver, if you want to Korver or Wes, one of the two, gone, don't care. Some of these other guys. But that's my core. That's what I want to see. Joe says, I wish they would have kept Malcolm. Malcolm Brogdon didn't want to be in Milwaukee. He thought Milwaukee was too racist. That's just the fact. That is just the fact. And I know everybody is worried about Giannis leaving. And I'm pulling up the quote today that should inspire anybody who is afraid of Giannis leaving Milwaukee and forcing a trade, because he's a free agent after next year. And here's a quote, and this is part of the quote. I'm not going to read the whole quote, but here's part of the quote from Giannis. That's not happening. Some see a wall and go in another direction. I plowed through it. We just have to get better as a team individually and get right back at it next season. If winning a championship was easy, everyone would have one. That's my guy right there. That is a guy you want on your team. He has said he's going to get you a championship, Milwaukee. He is screaming he's going to get a championship, Milwaukee, and he believes it. Now, back to Giannis. They can bring in Drew Holiday. They can bring in Bradley Beal. They can bring in whoever you want. But I put out a tweet, and I said this then, and I'm saying it right now. The Bucks don't ever win a championship if Giannis doesn't develop as a basketball player. The Bucks do not get any better, any closer to a championship if Giannis Antetokounmpo can't become a good free throw shooter and can't do something other than drive to the basket, Euro step, and slam dunk the basketball. I want Giannis in the gym when that ankle is healed. I want Giannis shooting 5,000 free throws a day in the morning, go eat lunch, come back, 5,000 jump shots a day, 20 feet and in. Back to the basket, pull up, somebody in his face, whatever. I don't care about the three-point line. I know the NBA is a three-point league. I don't care about the NBA's three-point line for Giannis Antetokounmpo, all right? He needs to develop something else besides a straight-line drive, and that's why that will be the key to the Milwaukee Bucks actually having an opportunity to defeat the Giannis wall that gets built every single time they face a good playoff team. Teams tried to do it in the regular season, but in the postseason, it's easier for everybody to scrap and claw and play that way, all right? You're game planning for one thing, all right? Giannis has to get in the gym. Giannis has to shoot 5,000 free throws a day, every day, and 5,000 jumpers every day. Back to the basket, pull up, at whatever you want. You seize the wall, guess what? Pull up. From the free throw line, even. It's fine. I don't care. He's got to develop something around the basket. That is the most important thing for Giannis in this offseason. How about developing a nice little reliable hook shot so it doesn't have to be always with the finger roll or the slam dunk? That's what I want to see. I want to see Giannis become a more developed player, a well-rounded player. All right? He's already hit MVP levels with numbers and rebounds, in points and assists, and he's a great defensive player. But on the offensive side, that's the difference. Listen, if Giannis had a jumper, they beat Toronto a year ago. If Giannis had a jumper, they beat Miami in the first couple of games. If Giannis could shoot free throws, it's not an abysmal embarrassment every single time he goes to the free throw line. Giannis has to improve as a shooter and not just be a straight line slam dunk artist. That's to me the biggest. Whatever happens this offseason, if they stick with my guy Bledsoe or they don't, Giannis has to develop more of an offensive game than just going to the hole. Cordell, do we know when the start of next season is? No. No, I have absolutely no idea. I don't have any clue. I think they're looking at December 1st. They might be looking at Christmas. We got a couple of weeks now left of these until it'll be LeBron or Kawhi playing against Toronto, or I don't even know what that series is at right now. I've just been so consumed with everything else in my life. But yeah, I mean, I think we'll get a couple of months off season. You'll watch football for a while, and then December starts. We'll get back at it, which means the draft is going to be in the next couple of weeks, and then free agency will be in the next couple of weeks, and then all of a sudden you're going to look up and it's training camp for the NBA season again. Alan, hey, Wicked, I agree. Giannis needs to focus on free throws and mid-range shots. Other players are already catching on to his drive and spin move. It's going to get stale. You're 100% right, and all of the analysts were talking about how everybody knows that when Giannis gets stopped, they know the spin is coming. So they're already over there when Giannis gets there. Teams are starting to figure Giannis out. He's got to figure out a new way to dominate the NBA. The soon-to-be two-time MVP. Maybe he can go back to back to back. I don't think the NBA will let him, but we shall see. One other question that came in said, who did you draft in your fantasy team? I've done 2 fantasy drafts so far. I have my third one tonight. It's actually with all my friends back in Milwaukee at 105.7 FM, The Fan. It's the league we've been doing, 9 years now, I think. The weird thing is only like 3 guys actually still work at The Fan. I'm in it. Josh Vernier is in it. Robbie Maklov is in it. I believe Bill Schmid will be in it. I know Tim Allen is in it. I think Leroy Butler's in our league still. Bart Winkler is in. It's my third league. So if you really want, on the podcast page, I'll post all 3 rosters that I have drafted. It's been really, really fun. And I'll tell you what, as a guy who stays home with 3 babies and doesn't have a whole lot else going on in his life besides this podcast right here, I need fantasy football more than ever. I do. I just do. We will have a lot of Packers stuff for you. If Bucs news does break, I will have it for you on the podcast as well. You can find the podcast on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on Google Podcasts. Subscribe, please. And I think I've mentioned this before. Go to WisconsinPodcast.com and vote for this podcast for Best Sports Podcast. I'm up for a Wisconsin Podcast Association award. I would appreciate it if you would do that. Buck season came to an end far too early. Short off season. We have this little NFL season in the middle of it, and then we'll get back at it on the hardwood. You'll be back at Fiserv Forum, hopefully, before you know it. Thanks to everybody who's been watching all these during the playoffs and during the bubble run. I wish I was going to be doing more of them, specifically Bucs-centered. We will be doing more of them Packers-centered, obviously. And if anything happens with the Milwaukee Brewers, as they make, hopefully, a run here in September, I think as I'm recording this, they're 4 games under 500. And then, of course, if the Big Ten does play football, we'll have plenty of Badger stuff for you as well. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much for listening. If you're checking it out on the podcast, please tell a friend about the podcast, especially if they're a fan of Wisconsin sports. This has been Wicket on Wisconsin. My name is Mike Wicket. I thank you so much for watching. And as always, go Pack, go Bucks, and go Brewers.
Thanks for listening to Wicket on Wisconsin. If you have any feedback or you want to reach out to the show, you can find me on Facebook, Mike Wicket Podcasts, or you can email MikeWicketPodcasts@gmail.com. And you can find me on Instagram and Twitter @MikeWicket. Thanks to Silverman Sound Studios for providing the music for today's show. And you can find us anywhere you find your podcasts, including Apple, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. Until next week, thanks for listening to Wicket on Wisconsin.